Hey guys, welcome back to KC Chase to the Pennant, your one-stop shop for all KC Royals news. My name is Cristian Martinez. With me as always is Kev. Kev, you just got married. Congrats.
Yep.
How you
Thank
doing?
you. Doing well. It was a great wedding. Got to go see a victory in Minnesota with our kind of mini honeymoon on Wednesday. So that was awesome. And then seeing the Royals win today in dramatic fashion and avoiding the series sweep by the Padres. So that was a nice thing, but feels different being a married man and having one of these on. But I'm excited for this next chapter.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw that on Twitter. You went out to the Minnesota game, so I'm glad. I think they won that game, right?
They did. That was the one win they had in Minnesota.
So speaking of Minnesota and the Padres, it's been a weird couple of series for Royals. Didn't really have the series they wanted with Minnesota, especially with this sort of tight AL Central. And then you go to the Padres, you have a really tough loss, including an 11-8 loss that went scoreless through 5 innings. You have that really big inning from the Padres, and then the Royals come back. Nelly's at the plate, almost hits a home run, but that stinking Kauffman Stadium did not allow it to be a home run. But regardless, today on this episode, I really want to talk about this recent slump because right now the Royals are luckily 11 games over 500, which is something you and I and a lot of people did not expect. This bullpen has been okay, but the starters have been really the talk of the town, and the offense has really been the definition of hot and cold. But Kev, I wanted to ask you, what do you think's going on right now with the Royals?
I think it's just, to be honest, it's a 162 game season, and we're starting to see some regression from some of the players, especially in the bullpen, right? Like, I think we're starting to see John Schreiber starting to look a little bit more mortal after kind of looking immortal in April and the beginning of May. I think we're starting to see some of the other hitters kind of going through their ups and downs. But we're also seeing some ups. We're seeing Nelson Velasquez, starting to. I was in Minnesota when he hit 2 home runs in Target Field, and him coming up with one of the crucial game tying triples. So, you're seeing him improve, but we're also seeing guys, start to kind of tail off a little bit, especially guys like MJ and kind of Kyle Isbell in the bottom of the lineup. But, Isbell's dealing with injuries. But I think it's just kind of that bullpen. I think the bullpen was really getting by with the defense and keep putting the ball in play and letting the defense do work. And the balls are falling in spots where it's becoming hits. And that's baseball. When you don't have a bullpen that strikes out guys in bunches, you're going to be susceptible to that. And that's kind of the streak that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, let's talk about this bullpen. Has been really, really odd. Probably one of the weirdest situations coming out from this season. I know the outfield has been really shaky, a little on and off, especially with Nelly and MJ. MJ we'll talk about here in a second, but I just feel like there's just a bunch of dudes. There's not. We talked about how Schreiber was going to be that guy, or Serpa, or even James McArthur, but unfortunately, they've all had their struggles and they've all had their kind of moments throughout the season, especially McArthur, man. I feel so bad for him because he was viewed as this closer. He did a really good job in the beginning of the season. He was able to close out games. I believe he has 9 saves, I want to say?
Yeah, he still has 9.
11.
No, he has 11 saves. Yeah.
Which, again, it's still a lot, but there was this little like kind of sets of games or a series of games where he was allowing home run after home run, allowing hit after hit, and he blew a couple games for us. Sometimes he kind of held himself or kept himself in control, but there are a lot of questions about if the Royals would need to get a high quality reliever, or do they need to move on from a guy like Nick Anderson or Stratton or even, Will Smith.
Yeah, I think that's the big question. I think we know what the main glaring weakness of this Royals team. We know that the outfield is inconsistent, but you still have guys like Nelly will go on a streak. Hunter Renfroe, has been better lately. And then also MJ showed that he could be hot. So outfield, obviously we need an improvement there. But the bullpen, I think, is the biggest issue, right? Because it's like, hey, like, we don't really know who to trust right now. At first, it was like, hey, MacArthur, Schreiber, and we've seen this past week that's been a little shaky. It's weird because the advanced metrics still love MacArthur. I mean, he's still, like, you look at things like XFIP and FIP and Sierra, which kind of measure kind of like without batted ball luck in play, he's looking really good. But a guy's always judged by his results, and the results aren't good. So I kind of, we'll see what he can do. I know 643 Royals tweeted about MacArthur and saying, he is young, and he doesn't even have a full season. He doesn't even have a half a season under his belt, really, at the major league level. So I think, is he just still kind of working through some things? Is the grind of Major League Baseball getting to him, and then he just needs to make an adjustment? But you're right. Like, what about guys like Anderson, guys like Smith, guys you can't really put in high leverage situations? So that's an issue. Like, if it's a close game and MacArthur is unavailable and Schreiber is unavailable, who do they go to? That's a bigger problem, I think, right now. And I think and thankfully Will Klein came through today, and James MacArthur came through today. But that's also going to be a big question: is that do they need to look outside the org for that?
And they've already kind of like started to fix some of the issues. You look at guys like Matt Sauer. Sauer was a guy who was a Rule 5 pick for the Royals, originally from the Yankees, and a lot of people thought, he has potential, but he needs time. Unfortunately for Sauer, with a 7.71 ERA, played in 14 games, doesn't have a ton of strikeouts, has more walks than strikeouts. He was the odd man out to start, and guys like Klein, right now, one of our guys, Pennington, having an insane AAA career down there in terms of this season. You want a guy like Klein up here, but you have to sacrifice players like Sauer. You look at guys like Duffy, who we brought in, who was expected to really sort of elevate this bullpen, but really hasn't done that, unfortunately. He's had his moments again, but also there are some parts where he doesn't really do a good job. Sam Long got called up, and he's been pretty good for the Royals as of recently. Jordan Lyles, that's a guy who I really had hopes for. I thought he'd be a really good kind of inning eater type of pitcher. Unfortunately, it seems like he's having some issues off the field, which sucks, but hopefully we'll see him back sooner rather than later. They also had guys like Veneciano come up, I should say, and Veneciano got called up. He's done okay as well. Hasn't done crazy good. Carlos Hernandez, another guy who throws a lot of really good pitches, including his kind of fastball. Really good fastball, I would say. But sometimes he can throw a meatball or two. But overall, the Royals are trying to find solutions, but I think they're going to have to make a trade, right?
Yeah, I think ultimately that's what needs to happen. The good thing is acquiring relievers is a little bit easier than requiring starters or position players during the season. But it's not easy because like everybody needs bullpen help, right? It's like everybody is like looking for like an extra arm, and the Royals farm system, it's gotten better, but it's not like doesn't have the reputation that of other farm systems. So it's like, are they willing to they have the capital to get an elite reliever, and then B, are they willing to sacrifice that farm system talent, and continue to stay where they're at? That's the big question. I think that's going to be the big difference between Dayton Moore and JJ, is what JJ decides to do in this kind of situation.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have the draft coming up pretty soon for the Royals, where I think they're slotted at like number 6, right?
Yep.
It is very interesting to see what they do with that pick, because they could just trade a guy like Waters, trade a position player, and then fill up that void with the draft pick that we get. Or they could just say, okay, let's go get a young pitcher, see what we can do with him, see if we can kind of rise him up the rankings quick. But that's something I'm kind of looking at too, because that might factor into who the Royals trade, what the Royals do. I just think with this bullpen, it's just not where you want it to be, especially as a contender. This would be a different conversation if the Royals were at 500. They were playing okay. They weren't doing great, but are showing improvements within the roster, within the organization. However, the Royals are exceeding expectations. And again, they're 11 games above 500. They're playing really good right now. Played really good during the beginning of the season. Kind of come back here recently. They had a 7-game series where they've won back to back. And I know that Cleveland had their 8-game win streak, or 9, and then we went to 8. And then we lost those 3 out of 4 games in Minnesota. Then we lost 2 out of 3 here with the Padres. But I think with us winning so much, everything changes, right?
Right.
Like now we view the bullpen as like, okay, this is a liability. We need to make changes. And I understand, you have to keep guys like Nick Anderson, Will Smith, Stratton, guys that you sign to improve this roster. But when you've seen them play in high stakes scenarios, they really haven't come through. I mean, Stratton has allowed hit after hit. I don't know who was pitching during that kind of barrage by the Pirates, or not the Pirates, the Padres, when it was single after single after single after single. But that can't happen, especially for a competing team, for the Royals who are competing. Like they're showing that they can kind of stand with the rest of the AL kind of juggernauts. And the Royals just got to make a change. I don't know where that's going to be. I have some of my trade predictions here later that we'll talk about, but I really wanted to focus on that for a little bit. Now I want to talk about another big issue, the outfield. Oh boy. Oh boy. MJ Melendez. It is I don't know what happened. I don't know what's going on, but I want to hear your thoughts, Kev, on MJ Melendez right now.
Yeah, I wrote a post a few days ago kind of looking at whether or not this is the right time to call down or option MJ Melendez and let him work on his issues at the minor league level. Last year, the Royals didn't do that. They kind of let MJ kind of work through his own things at the major league level. And in the second half, MJ became a really good player. But that last year was different, right? Last year was a 56-win team. You can afford to be patient with a guy when you're losing 106 games, especially if they're a long-term option. Kind of like what you said with the bullpen, if this team was around 500 or maybe like 3 or 4 games under 500, I could say, okay, let's keep MJ working on it. We know that MJ has the talent to at least produce a good second half. We know that he can do that. But this is different. This team is 11 games over 500. This team is in the hunt in what might be a very tough division. I mean, Cleveland continues to hum, though they did lose today, so the Royals were able to make some ground. But the Twins won, so they're nipping at the Royals' heels. So I feel like something has to give, and I think MJ needs a reset. And I know we're hoping that he has a big week and then he's snapped out of it and then he's MJ of old. But I'm finding it harder and harder to believe that, especially when you watch him in person. He just looks overwhelmed by pitchers with premium heat. He just looks off. And that's why I feel like having him work on his mechanical issues in Omaha would be better served for the Royals and for him at the end of the day.
Remember, Kev, at the beginning of the season, he made a major change to his batting stance and even his approach to the plate. I saw in the beginning, especially during spring training, that his swing kind of altered a little bit. And I don't know if that was a Royals thing or if that was just something he wanted to change personally to improve, but that could be a problem too with Melendez. When I watch MJ, I agree. He's a guy who just looks kind of lost, especially when he's at the plate and it's the 0-2 count. He really can't get himself out of it. It's hard. It's hard to watch him, especially when the Royals kind of have momentum, especially when they get a couple hits, 2 guys before him get on base, and then Melendez comes up and he gets a ground ball, a fly out. He's just not producing at the level that we expected him to produce. We expected Melendez to be one of the big guys up there with Bobby Witt and Salvi and Garcia and Vinny. But unfortunately, he's just the odd man out. He doesn't fit with this team right now. And I think he does belong in AAA. I think the Royals could benefit from keeping him there. However, I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. What if the Royals were to trade him? What if they see Drew Waters as the better player? What if they say, okay, we're going to keep Drew here, but we got to package one of our outfielders out to some other team? And Murph can be that guy. I mean, he has a lot of potential. He's young. He has some controllable years. And he has, again, it's the potential that you really kind of look at. But I don't know. It's just, I look at this lineup and I even look from, the 9 that usually bat. And to me, guys like Melendez, even Renfroe and Hampson, not let's count out Hampson because Hampson has his mistakes, but
Yeah.
he has a really good average. He has a better average than Melendez.
Yeah.
Hampson's at a 314 right now, and MJ Melendez is at a 167. I can at least appreciate the fact that Hampson can get some hits. It's the base running and just the fielding that gives me some I'm not a fan of, but I just don't know. I don't want to hate on Melendez because I love him. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
He's been here with the Royals for a long time. Not a long time, but he's been here for quite a bit. And he's someone that we thought was going to be, huge for the future of the Royals and the franchise. But it's that mindset of, okay, you are competing in our year 2024, where a lot of people expected us to be 500, to just be right down the middle, to not be great. And now we got to do something. And watching Renfroe, watching Melendez just go up to the plate and give us not enough, I'm done with it. Like I'm tired. Like I get that Renfroe has a cannon of an arm, and who knows what can happen in this season. Baseball is one of the most unpredictable sports out there. But having 2 guys who have, I think they're underneath the Mendoza line, like you want production from all 9. You don't want a hole to sit there, because when you have a close game and right up the plate is one of your holes, you know that it's not going to be great. It's not going to be favorable. And even just comparing, Kev, the top 4 of our lineup to everything else, it's like night and day.
Yeah.
Because you watch Michael, Bobby, Vinny, Salvi, they produce like crazy. And heck, even when Massey was there, that top 5, amazing. Probably some of the best in baseball. Hot take. Probably the best top 5 in baseball right there. But then you get to the last 4, and it's just like you're pulling teeth, man. You're waiting for one of them to really like pop off, to go off. And right now, Nelly has been that. I'm glad that he's really kind of picking up, because we need that in the bottom 4. Because when you have guys like Melendez, Renfroe, Frazier, even guys occasionally like Blanco, like when they get Blanco starts, I get why they would want to start him because of that Angels game that he had where he went insane.
Yeah.
But it just, I don't know. I think besides trading for a reliever, I think the Royals need to trade for an outfielder who can define the outfield. Like they need that guy who can step up and be the guy. Because for me, MJ was supposed to be that. Like MJ, I thought he was going to be the one to step up and be the star of the outfield. When you look at the infield and even catching, there's a whole like potential all-star team right there. An all-star unit with Vinny, Bobby, when Massey gets back, Massey, Michael Garcia, and then Freddie and Salvi, kind of switching it back and forth. That's probably some of the best kind of infield / catching duo in baseball. But then you get to the outfield, and it's just there's no one who screams, okay, he's the guy, he's the star. Isbell, great defense, shaky on offense. We already talked about MJ. Renfroe has a good arm, but not really good at bats. Frazier plays outfield occasionally. Hampson plays outfield occasionally. There's just not a guy who stands out and says, okay, I'm going to patrol my side of the field, and I'm going to show why the Royals outfield is not to be messed with.
Yeah, I mean, with there's so many struggles with the outfield, right? Like we have so many, there's so many It's like it's not just MJ Melendez, but then the problem is what does MJ do well, right? It's like Blanco, he's fast. You can have him off the bench as a pinch runner. Renfroe has an arm, and he can hit home runs every now and then. Isbell has defense. Adam Frazier, he can walk, he can get on base. And I think at the end of the day, it's hard. You can't have a lot of imperfect people on there, especially if one's not cutting one's not holding their weight, I guess. And that's where I kind of with MJ, it's just he's not giving you anything that you're not getting with Nelson Velasquez. He's not giving you anything that you're not getting with Hunter Renfroe right now. It's just unfortunately that is what it is. And so I totally agree with you. It's like let's let him work it out in AAA. Let's see if he can get what he needs playing every day. And then let's see if come July by the All-Star break, he's ready to go and kind of ready to have a big second half like he did last year.
So we talked about the big two issues. Again, I want to talk about some of the things that have been working well for the Royals.
Mm-hmm.
Starting pitching has been crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just put it like that. I think guys like Lugo, I think guys like Reagans, some of the big reasons why the Royals are winning in the first place. Unfortunately, Singer seems to have some kind of illness.
Yeah,
has been doing a little bit better, but hopefully he comes back. I know that they just called up Daniel Lynch again.
Yep.
And they sent Waka has a foot injury that we didn't even know about until after the game, where he had I think it's a minor foot fracture, or it's not like too severe, but it's still a fracture in his foot, which is not great, but we'll see where that goes. But starting pitching has been great.
Yeah, and I think and I totally agree. It's like the starting pitching and the hitting, or I'm at the hitting, starting pitching. That's been kind of a lot of people said JJ needed to improve that, and he did, and the results have followed. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with Waka out.
Yeah, I think that again, Lynch was always going to be the second guy behind Marsh when we were talking about the 5 spot.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that Lynch is going to get some more time. I also am very interested to see if they call up like Bolin back.
Yeah.
If Jonathan Bolin will get a second chance as like the 5, or even Chandler. Chandler Champlain. He could be a 5, because I know that he just got called up to the AAA team, to the Storm Chasers, but he's a guy that the Royals can say, okay, he's on a streak, a nice streak, has shown that he can kind of pitch to these AAA guys. Let's see what he can do with the majors. It wouldn't hurt. It would be just one loss. The Royals are still, apparently, they're still kind of predicted to kind of win 90-plus games this series, or this season. But still, there are a lot of options. So at least the Royals aren't in the spot where they're kind of stuck and they're losing a lot of starters. It's just for now, Michael Waka, you're getting the Singer back at some point, but yeah. And then what were you going to say, Kev?
No, I was going to say, because I mean, it's good to have Singer back, because again, Waka, they're saying it's going to be about 3 to 4 weeks. So we're probably looking at Waka not coming back until end of June, maybe start of July at the soonest.
Now, the other thing that's really been working for the Royals is what we talked about, the top 4. Maikel Garcia, Bobby Witt Jr., Salvi, Vinny.
Yep.
Those 4 have been tremendous for the Royals. Probably one of the biggest reasons why they're winning so much, besides the starting pitching, is they're all producing like they should be. Maikel Garcia had a really, really odd streak of not getting enough hits, not producing enough. But recently, he's been really good. And I got to thank Cody Tapp. Shout out to Cody for all his amazing songs. Without his music, we'd be nowhere. Without his quality music, we would be nowhere. Bobby Witt, again, when he signed that extension, a lot of people were saying, okay, you better live up to this extension. And he's done that. I wouldn't be shocked again if he keeps climbing up the ranks for MVP and if he wins MVP because he's having that kind of season. He's not having the home runs like you want,
Right.
and I blame Kaufman for that.
Yeah.
But he's getting extra base hits. He's getting walks. He's getting steals. His defense is tremendous. Even though today he had a shaky incident with Kyle Isbell. Poor
Yeah.
Kyle Isbell.
Can't
Poor
catch a
Kyle
break.
Isbell. He just so yeah. In today's game, which is the last game for them against the Padres, I think what happened was Bobby Witt hit Isbell right in the face. I think he got kneed. Is what I think occurred, right?
Yeah, he got hit. Witt's knee kind of hit into the side of Isbell's face.
Yikes!
Yeah.
That's brutal. Ugh. Yeah, that that sends shivers, bro. That's ugh. I feel bad for him, but anywho, other than that, Bobby's been really good on defense. Michael's been good on defense. Vinny's been really good on defense. Salvi, even when Salvi plays first, he's done more than enough. And then when Massey's healthy and when he's doing well, he's been pretty good at second base too. Lofton is filled in nicely as well.
Yeah.
But again, that top four plus the starters just playing out of their minds, I think has really helped the Royals kind of play better than people expected.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing those top four. It's like, and they've had their ups and downs, except Bobby. I think Bobby and Salvi have been the ones that have been consistent all year, but Vinny and Michael have had ups and downs, but they're still solid. They're making all the improvements that you want. Michael, his strikeout rate's down. He's still making hard contact. So that's a good sign. Vinny's starting to kind of lift and elevate the ball more. And yeah, you're right. Bobby hasn't hit the home runs, which I think could hurt him for an MVP case. But we've seen him go on streaks where the home runs just flow, like we saw last year. So it wouldn't be surprising to me that if he comes like June or July or August, he has like a 10 home run month, because that's the kind of hitter he is. Once he's starting to elevate the ball, it's all going to come at once. But yeah, you can't complain about the 1-4. In fact, you got to admit, like, hey, that 1-4 is a big reason why this team has overperformed and they're 11 games over 500.
Now, before we finish this episode, I want to talk about who the Royals could potentially acquire to help improve this roster. A couple friends of mine are saying that Tanner Scott is a really good option.
Yeah.
In terms of relief pitchers. But Kev, I want to hear kind of who we should look out for in terms of potential relief pitchers who can improve this Royals organization or improve the bullpen in a matter of, one trade.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at organizations that will look to trade, you're probably looking at organizations like the Angels, like the Marlins, like the Athletics, teams that are just not very good and probably are not very connected to their guys. They're obviously rebuilding. Tanner Scott is a big name from the Marlins. Mason Miller, obviously a name from the A's. I love Mason Miller. Mason Miller would be really expensive though. The A's do have some other arms in there that are pretty quality. They have a top ranked bullpen, even though their team is not very top ranked. The Marlins, obviously Tanner Scott. They have more of the starter capital. So if Waka's injury becomes a long term thing, maybe you get AJ Puck. Maybe you are able to get somebody that you could kind of throw in there in a hybrid role. And the Angels, again, this is a starter, but Reed Detmers was optioned to AAA. Reed Detmers was pretty phenomenal, like less than a year ago. So the Angels look like they're kind of rebuilding. So I wouldn't be surprised if some calls are coming there. So those are kind of some of the names that I'm thinking from a bullpen end that stick out. But it's so early, and it's hard too with bullpen because guys get hurt. And so there's a guy that you think is going to be a good candidate suddenly gets hurt and then they're not available. So we'll kind of see how that it kind of develops.
Yeah, and we're going to transition real quick to who I think we should get for the outfield. Tommy Pham is one of those guys who I wish we can get.
Yeah.
He's been playing really well with the White Sox, a guy who has shown to produce, and again, a little bit older than what you want, but still having that veteran presence is very much needed, especially for a team that is younger than expected, needs someone to step up. and can also produce at the same time. But one guy I really, really want to talk about is Taylor Ward from the Angels.
Yeah.
If the Angels really do believe that they want to move on from some of their guys, need to make a sort of reset, obviously don't go for Mike Trout. There's no way you can afford Mike Trout. But Taylor Ward's a quality option. He would be a guy I would say would be the difference maker in the outfield because he's shown to produce defensively. He's been pretty good. He's not a liability. He plays a little bit of both. However, you talked about the Marlins. There are two guys in the Marlins who really have been connected to the Royals in a sense, but also a lot of Royals fans want them. Brian De La Cruz
Uh-huh.
and Jazz Chisholm.
Yeah.
Two guys who, again, I know Jazz is more name recognition rather than kind of production, but still having a guy like Jazz on the Royals could help kind of jumpstart his 2024 season, kind of give him the boost that he needs. But we all know that Brian De La Cruz has been really good for the Marlins, has shown to produce, has shown to be a great outfielder, and he's a guy who could step up and be that guy in center field and then can kind of take off some of the pressure from left and right field. I think that these moves overall are going to be very reminiscent of what the Royals did at the beginning of the season because you look at guys like Singer and Reagans, not even Reagans, just Singer, and a lot of our kind of guys who were put in those like win now kind of situations or were put in high pressure situations. They really didn't do well. But when you bring in a guy, for example, Seth Lugo is a guy you know you can get wins out of and can play quality ball and is shown to, play at a high level. That gives some kind of relief to players like Singer, to
Mhm.
Reagans, to even vets like Waka and Marsh. So I think a guy like De La Cruz could really provide that kind of Lugo-esque role for the outfield. Give Melendez that kind of like, okay, not everything's on me now. I
Yeah.
can take a step back. I can make some improvements. I can go to AAA, take some time there. So if I were the Royals, I'd look at getting a guy like De La Cruz or getting a guy like Taylor Ward so you can improve this outfield and just get better.
Yeah, and I think those are great options. I think definitely Taylor. I'd love to see a deal that involves Taylor Ward and Reed Detmers. Obviously the Angels are probably not looking at them in their long-term plans. De La Cruz, I really love too. He's always been a fan favorite of mine. So yeah, I mean, I think those are really good options. I think the Royals need to improve there, and I think those are some routes they can go to improve.
Let's say, to close out the show, let's say the Royals make a trade for Reed Detmers and Taylor Ward. If you're the GM, who would you send back?
I mean, I think right now you're probably sending. I mean, Drew Waters probably has to be part of that conversation. As much as I like Drew Waters, the organization probably doesn't feel the same way. Otherwise, we would have seen Drew Waters up at this point. So I feel like
Mhm.
Drew Waters would be part of that conversation. I think you would have to maybe have a guy like Lynch or Ballin that might be as a throw in, just because they're not touching the rotation right now, or at least not going to be regularly part of the rotation. And then you got to think about some kind of prospect. Would the Royals be willing to give up Gavin Cross? Would the Royals be able to give up a Ben Cadurna or a Frank Mazzucato to kind of seal the deal? Those are hard decisions, but I think that's what I would think would give up. Somebody who's big league ready, like and like Waters, somebody who's on the cusp of being big league ready, and then maybe a prospect with some upside.
Yeah, I would say Waters, Lynch, and maybe again, I know that Lacey has had his kind of
Hmm.
setbacks, but I wonder if the Angels take a flyer or take some kind of deal on Lacey, on Asa Lacey, just so they can like say, okay, we know he's good. He's a high kind of draft pick for the Royals who just hasn't been doing well. Maybe he can do well here in our
Yeah,
system.
yeah,
So that would be, I would say that's a good trade because again, Waters, Lynch, and then a prospect, you would get a quality starting outfielder who can make a name for themselves. And then you have a guy like Reed who you don't have to put in a high pressure situation. You can have him as a bullpen guy, but also someone who just provides something different for the Royals right now and gives them more arms and gives them the chance to really just make the changes they need to really kind of form this bullpen.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think Lacey would be an interesting one because, I mean, the upside is still there. Obviously, a lot of risk. But again, could that be what sweetens the deal and the A's and the Angels think, hey, like that's the kind of project we want to take on? Who knows?
All right, well, we're gonna wrap up the show. Thank you so much, guys, for listening, for watching. We really appreciate it. Hopefully, the Royals kind of really pick themselves up here. We have the next series. We play Cleveland.
Yeah, huge, big series.
Hopefully, we get the sweep. Hopefully, we win that series. But thank you so much, guys, for watching and listening. We'll catch you next time.
Later.